My name is Carter Latif. I have spinal muscular atrophy type 2. I was studying media and communications last year, but now I'm taking a year out to pursue some work experience in post-production. I've been using the Hayek at home for 6 years after a couple of years in the hospital.
We happened to be at the Spinal Muscular conference and saw RTX, which looked interesting as a possible thing to use in the future. So it was always in the back of our minds, and we also knew that St George's used it.
Before I got the Hayek, I was going into hospital around 5 times during the winter.
He was introduced to BiPAP, which was sufficient to begin with, but after a few years he actually needed a bit more support.
I had multiple chest infections, which meant I had to go into the hospital to use the Hayek.
I'm a paediatric physio. I worked in the NHS for 30 years, specifically around Carter. He was being admitted to hospital predominantly for use of the Hayek and would go in for 3 or 4 days and then come home.
Took to it really well, it was comfortable. It was the fact that it could give him a bit easier breathing, just expanding his lungs in order that he could get as much in as possible during those difficult times.
My lungs can feel quite tight when I have an illness, and so it just kind of relieves that tightness in my chest.
This setup would be better at home because we just didn't want to be in hospital constantly, and being in ICU is quite stressful. We got it at home, set it up, and Carter hasn't been in hospital for the last 6 years.
Carter has a respiratory plan which is one of prophylaxis, so he uses it once a day on physio mode or more if he needs to. And then we have a respiratory plan should he become unwell.
After getting the Hayek for home, it stops me going to hospital because I can just use it with any signs of illness. I can use it straight away. When I'm not ill, I use the machine every morning on secretion clearance and cough assist modes as soon as I get up.
It frees you up to communicate and also just to get sips of water constantly in, because hydration's a big thing.
Throughout the day he is offered fluids every hour or so, even when he's well. Whereas on the BiPAP or obviously more invasive ventilation, that wouldn't be an option.
I use the cough assist and secretion clearance modes when I'm ill around 4 times a day, and then between that I also use the negative pressure to try and expand my lungs.
And then as soon as he put it on, the negative pressure just expanded his lungs and he would just feel a little bit of ease, immediate, therefore he was feeling better.
Yeah, it's much easier to breathe with the negative pressure on. I do feel calmer when I can take deeper breaths.
And I think sometimes we can forget that actually being intubated is not a very nice experience.
RTX works. We need to use that before we go into anything as extreme as a tracheostomy.
Some of the psychological impacts of long-term ventilation in intensive cares are well documented. So if we can shorten length of time in any medical setting, I think it's better.
The Hayek has changed my life for the better through stopping me needing to go to hospital. I haven't had to go in for the last 6 years. I can manage my care at home.